All right, so this is Motion Builder. Motion Builder is free educational license Autodesk software. I think Juliana had a little bit of a heart attack in the chat last week. She was like, "Yo, Motion Builder is $3,000, or something like that." No, not right now. You can use your educational license, but the software is expensive. So this is Motion Builder, and the first thing that I would suggest that you do in Motion Builder is take a look at your control scheme. The first time that you open Motion Builder up, it's going to ask you what this menu is here. If you go to Settings Interaction Mode, you'll see this the first time that you open Motion Builder. And for a Maya user like me, who doesn't know Motion Builder shortcuts off the top of my head, I'm just going to put this as using Maya controls for Motion Builder. There's just Autodesk stuff. It's not C4D controls in here or anything like that. But those will be the controls that I'm using during class and whenever I talk about Motion Builder. All right, so let's import an avatar. Okay, so the very first thing that you should do is identify what the heck your avatar is. You should have done that before you did the motion capture shoot, so you know how to act during the motion capture shoot. It's a very scrawny character. It's going to act very differently than if it's like a heavy monster Godzilla sort of character, right? The performance is going to be different. So for today, I'm going to use a Ready Player Me character. I'm going to use a couple characters today. Fundamentally, the workflow that we do today is the same regardless of where the avatar comes from. The avatar is a body that we're going to put the motion capture on, right? It doesn't matter if it comes from Ready Player Me, doesn't matter if it comes from Mixamo, doesn't matter if it comes from wherever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that it's a humanoid character. So like this monster dude right here, yeah, he's kind of spooky. He has all this clothing and stuff. There's this weird shoulder pad, has some horns, and he's pretty ripped. But it's still humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, right? This dude, exactly the same as this lady, although maybe the skirt might cause a little bit of unexpected problems. This dude, this person with the big sword, they're all humanoids, right? Same as Ready Player Me. If I wanted to get something from Turbo Squid, I don't know what to search for. Oh, here's something that won't work. You're going to pay your $70 for Spider Creature here. Not going to work with what we're doing. Can you put motion capture on something like this? Absolutely. But it's going to take a little bit more thinking about how you retarget the movements. Remember the Smog the Dragon mocap that we watched? That was a lot of facial motion capture and some body motion capture taken from the actor, put onto this giant dragon. Obviously, the actor doesn't have wings, doesn't have a long tail, doesn't have an enormous body, doesn't live on a pile of gold. So that performance has to be interpreted or retargeted onto the character. Question.
Is it only like one way that like after the actor records them and then like the programmer retargets it, or does like the actor has to consider beforehand that like the actions that they are capable of like being targeted to?
Well, that's kind of 2 different questions. One is the performance. Performance is the performance. You're not going to be able to go back and redo that unless you do a reshoot, right? Like if you have your performer walk with a very heavy body versus not having a limp and being very formal about their movements, you can't re-record that. You have to re-record that. You're not going to be able to change that, right? What we can do with the data is we could take arm data and put it on one of these spider legs. We could take leg data and put it on the tail if you wanted to. We could do what's called FK and IK rigging, where we could take the movement of the tail and attach it to how far the leg moves. So when the leg moves a lot, it wiggles the tail a little bit, even though there isn't necessarily a motion capture joint that's driving the tail. That's a lot more complex than what we're going to do today. So my suggestion is just use humanoids. It's going to be a lot easier without getting ourselves into trouble. So anything like the spider guy, a big dragon, whatever this character would be fine. Leprechaun guy, and 'tis the season, I suppose. And his pot of gold. This big monster dude, fine. And anything that's a humanoid, even like strange looking creatures like this, fine. Humanoid characters, okay? So I'm going to use a humanoid character today. I'm going to go ahead and download this from Ready Player Me. So we have the GLB file. If you're using Ready Player Me, we've gone through this workflow already where we have to convert the GLB file to an FBX file. So unfortunately, I have to open Blender to do that. If you're not using a Ready Player Me character, then you don't have to do this part. Where did I put this? Player Me. Where the heck did I put that? Desktop. There we go. All right, importing my character. So one thing that is interesting about Ready Player Me characters, and some characters from other places too, is that this already comes with a rig. It has a joint system already. This person has a joint system, an armature, as Blender calls it. Notice that she is in an A pose, not a T pose. This is an important consideration that we're going to solve in a moment here. We recorded to T poses in our motion capture data, right? If I take an avatar and I bring it into Motion Builder and it's in an A pose, and I sync those two together, because that's what retargeting is. It's saying, take this motion capture data from this skeleton and apply it to this skeleton. If I take the motion capture data from a motion capture shoot that I recorded and put it on her skeleton, I'm saying that my T pose is her A pose. Or I'm saying when she's in an A pose, she's actually in a T pose, which is going to give you very weird results. You're going to get mixed, you're going to get mixed arms, and it's just going to look bad. It's mostly the arms that are going to be the problem. The rest of the body will be fine. But if that ever happens to you, when you sync them together, when you finally apply the data to the actor, it's probably because they're not in the same poses. So that's all right. We can put her in a T pose. And the easiest way for us to do that, we're going to use Mixamo to rig them. Rigging something custom, it's a little outside the scope of our class. It's very, very time-consuming process to paint skin weights and all that. So we're just going to use an auto rigger in the website Mixamo. If your character has a rig already and you kind of understand the process a little bit, and you would like to put them in a T-pose manually, you could do that. That's absolutely fine. But in the interest of the rest of the class, I'm just going to keep things simple. So I have my Ready Player Me character imported into Blender as a GLB. I'm going to export this as an FBX. Ready Player Me. A pose. Save the textures, even though I know that it's problematic sometimes. Export. So all I've done is just taken the Ready Player Me character and just converted it to an FBX at this point. FBX is a standardized 3D file. It's the file that we import into Unreal. It's the file that Motion Builder wants. This is just a Ready Player Me problem, convert from GLB to FBX. Okay, let's put her into a T-pose. So I'm going to go to Mixamo, mixamo.com. We've talked about it a little bit in the past, where you had to drag the joint positions onto the character, the elbows, the chest, the groin, the knees. There's a couple more. I'm going to go and find that Ready Player Me character that I just exported from Blender. Depending on how big it is, just let it process. Because she already has a rig, it's not going to ask me to place those positions on her body. If your character didn't have a rig, or if I went into Blender and I deleted her rig, her skeleton, then it would ask me to place those things. You see some of the textures got messed up. That's all right. Click next. And now I just need to download it. I don't need to put any animation on it because we're not using Mixamo's animation. We're using all of your lovely animation. And there was some really good stuff. I was looking at some of it. Did anybody get a chance to review any of their takes, or you've just put it in a box somewhere for the last week? No? Nobody?
Someone has an on it. Not me.
There's some epic death sequences and a lot of walking with wonder and a lot of good stuff in there. So all we need to do is just download it now, because I'm just downloading the T-pose from Mixamo. This is just a simple way for you to rig a character without us having to custom rig. So click the download button. This pops up, says how do you want to download it. This is the default T-pose FBX. Download. Save as. Call it T-pose now. Save. All right, now she's going to be in a T-pose, and I can open her up in Motion Builder. If I didn't have a Ready Player Me character, I could have just skipped all that and imported the FBX straight into Motion Builder if it was in a T-pose. So Motion Builder, let's go ahead and dive in. So Motion Builder, File, Open, and it's expecting an FBX file. So I'll browse to that one that I just saved, the T-pose. Open. So when you open a FBX file in Motion Builder, a lot of times there'll be multiple takes of animation in a single FBX file. And you can choose which ones you want to import. In this case, there's only one, the T-pose. So I'm going to go ahead and just open that. You can also rename things here if you would like, but I'm just going to keep it as is. And here she is in a T-pose. There's also all these garbage spheres around here. This doesn't really cause a problem or anything. These are all the different blend shapes on or the FK-IK rigging on some of the joints. And for some reason, they import from Ready Player Me characters like this. I find it a little annoying. So I'm going to show you how to scale these down. I'm just selecting all of them. Marquee selection, left click, dragging on them. I don't want to click on the actual joints on her body, just the big giant ones. And if I go to scene down in the bottom here, this is where I can see the hierarchy for her skeleton. And if I was to scale this down now, I can use the the W, E, and R keys, W, E, and R, just like in Unreal, for the different translation widgets or transformation widgets. So movement, E is rotation, and R is scale, WER. Just like Unreal. Just like Maya too, I think. If I scale these down now, it's going to scale the whole body, which is what I don't want. So I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to deselect her armature. So I just went over here and deselected the armature. Control click. Now I can scale these annoying things down so I can actually see what's going on with my character. So I selected them, and then I deselected the armature so I wasn't scaling everything down. I just wanted to scale those. What those little circles and spheres are is they're joints. But for some reason, they explode really large when you import Ready Player Me FBX into Motion Builder. If they don't bother you, then just leave them. Personally, it clutters up my screen. I don't like that. That's just me. Question?
Hey, so my like motion builder interface, like all the words are like half cropped.
Oh no.
It's like it's so zoomed out. I don't know if you've ever dealt with that before.
Well, your screen looks black to me right now.
I know. I have the
Oh, privacy screen.
I
I just thought you've been staring at a black screen. Like, what are you doing? That's cool. You can't.
It's been like that since I saw it.
This is Windows 11.
Yeah.
Sometimes when stuff like this happens, I go into the properties of the actual programming. You just right click on the Motion Builder icon. This is a Windows problem. Right click on Motion Builder.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh, well, yeah, the properties. Go to compatibility. Change high DPI settings. Use this setting because program. Sometimes messing around with these things can. I think it's a high DPI. What's the resolution of this stuff?
It's okay.
Well, that's your problem. You're just too high resolution. I would mess around with these things.
I've never messed around with the DPI settings.
This is specifically for the individual program, so you're not going to Windows or anything like that. Yeah, if you want to try just going into your display settings and maybe lower it down to 1080p just to see if that fixes it. I've never seen this with Motion Builder, but I've seen it with other programs. It's pretty annoying. Some of them just haven't been updated to take advantage of higher resolution screens, even though it's 2023.
I actually fixed the problem.
Oh, for real? Oh, wow. I'm a genius.
Nice.
That was completely staged. We talked before class.
IT-oriented jobs.
Yep. Okay. Back to Motion Builder. Okay. So navigation in Motion Builder. If you hold down Alt and left mouse button, you can orbit. Alt middle mouse button allows you to pan, and Alt right click allows you to zoom in and out. Again, these are with the Maya settings for Motion Builder. So if you're not using those settings, then your controls are going to be different. I had a class last semester where my frame rate in Unreal was just insanely slow. And that was pissing me off. And I was teaching the class, but I was keeping it on the down low, so I didn't let anybody know there was a problem. But just in the back of my head, I'm like, what the hell is the problem? What is going on? I'm like restarting it without stating the problem that's happening. And then finally I realized it's because I didn't have my laptop plugged in. So my GPU wasn't getting all the juice. Really dumb.
Yeah, it reminds me. I was lagging everywhere, and then I checked and it was plugging in, but then like after half an hour, I realized I was in like low battery mode.
Yep, that'll do it. Another dumb thing happened this morning. Ben can vouch for this. I was doing the calibration wand for the mocap shoot. We had the last group went this morning, and I was standing far away from the screen, waving the wand around, and I was like, what is this white marker that's on the screen? I don't see it in the room. There's nothing on me. What is it? I walked over to the computer monitor, and it's my cursor on my mouse. Derp. All right, motion building. So we have our avatar imported. Our avatar has a skeleton. That skeleton got created by Mixamo, and we brought it in. She's in a T-pose, okay? Now I need to bring in some motion capture data. So I'm gonna go to File, Merge, because we wanna merge the data into this file that we already have open. File, Merge, and I'm gonna browse for someone's lovely motion capture data. Let's just see the epic fight sequence, I suppose. All right, open it up, same thing. There's only one take in each FBX file, merge. All right, well, this gives us a good opportunity too because the skeletons are not facing the right direction. Does this look familiar to anyone? Wow.
Oh wow. That looks very familiar to me.
So you were the one getting killed. Oh. Totally epic.
And you just stand right up.
Yep. So here's the skeletal data. This performance was 2 actors. The actors have separate skeletons, so they exist as separate entities. We could select one and delete the other one if we wanted to. I think maybe I'm going to go ahead and do that just for simplicity's sake. In Motion Builder, in the Navigator tab here, I call this the outliner because it's called that in other programs. So if I ever say outliner, this is what I mean. The navigator that shows everything in our scene. If you click the scene drop down, it will show you everything that's in your scene. So for instance, armature, eye, left, right, and all the Wolf 3D stuff, that is all the Ready Player Me character. The 2 at the bottom are our lovely 2 performers for the shoot. If I was to select one of them that I want to delete.
Whoa.
Is Lucas not here? Should we delete him instead? All right, sure. Snooze, you lose. Well, I just want to delete one just to simplify things. So if I select it and I go right click, delete, confirm, that's just going to delete the root joint. It's not going to delete any of the rest of the hierarchy. This is a little bit of an annoying thing about Motion Builder. It's like this for a reason, but it is just a little bit of an annoying thing. I want to delete the entire skeleton for Lucas. No offense. So I have to select all of the joints on that skeleton. You don't want to click the plus icon and all this entire hierarchy and make all those joints fly out. That sucks, right? So if you right click in Motion Builder you can go to select branches, and that will select everything. You can see that their entire body right here is green right now. I suppose you could marquee select it in the screen as well. Now if I right click, delete, confirm, see ya, gone. Okay. So this motion capture data, fantastic, lovely performer, one of the best, a real professional. But there's a problem. The problem is, this may be my fault. Well, it's not really a problem. It's a fixable thing. Although we could have avoided this if I pointed it out while we were shooting. When shooting, we calibrate with the wand, right? And then we place the little L thing on the floor to pick the ground plane, right? The ground plane calibrator not only does the ground plane where it sets the floor, it also sets the orientation of the grid. Our Ready Player Me character right now is facing positive Z. Positive Z is out of the screen in 3D programs, although in Unreal, Z is up. So in 3D programs, though, it's in and out of the screen. When we calibrated downstairs, you can change this. You can do it differently if you prefer, but I always like to set positive Z facing towards the front of the room where the doors are, so you can see the screen. Makes sense, right? You wouldn't want to face positive Z this way, then you'd be looking over your shoulder the whole time. But you can do it whichever way you want. The point I'm trying to make is that we need to have the motion capture data skeleton and the avatar skeleton in the same orientation, the same pose and the same orientation when we combine them together. If I was to combine it right now, it's not going to look too good. We're going to get a lot of weird twisted arm stuff. That's going to happen. So if you T-posed towards the doors, assuming you calibrated it this way, on set, we wouldn't have to do what we're going to do right now. My fault. All right. So if I go over and I select the hips, what I need to change is I need to change the rotation of the hips. The hips right now are rotated, negative 90 degrees in Y, I think. What I want to do is I want to select the hips and then right click on the root of the avatar down in the navigator. And I want to say expand branch. When I expand branch, it's going to expand the entire hierarchy. Scroll up here, you'll see there's a lot of stuff. All the fingers, shoulder, the feet, everything is there. Every single joint is there. And I have the hips selected. What I want to do is I want to right click on the hips and go to 0, rotation. Zero, rotation. I am zeroing out the rotation on the hips. Dun, 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 dun. Now it's facing forward. This is not keyframed. I'm not overwriting the data right now. If I was to scrub the timeline now, it's going to undo everything that I just did. See, now it snaps back to where it was originally. I just need those to be zeroed out and in the same position and the same orientation when I merge them together. I don't need to actually set a keyframe for that. You could also zero out shoulder joints too, if you wanted to get into a better T-pose. If you had an A-pose and you brought the A-pose character into here, we could zero out in Motion Builder without having to go to Mixamo and doing the T-pose there. It's a little bit more advanced, but something that you can do. If you notice that your performer's T-pose is a little saggy, you could fix it in Motion Builder. The point is that you want the T-poses for your avatar and for your motion capture data to be facing the same way and in the same position as closely as possible. Yeah.
Is there any specific reason
Exactly. The parent is the hips. So every other joint is attached to that and coming along for the ride. So because I scrubbed the timeline, I'm going to go back and do it again. 0, rotation. If I did all, then it puts the hips at the middle of the grid on the floor. And it also undoes the rotation too. I don't want to do that, because then my character is going to be in the floor, right? So just the rotation.
Does it like automatically rotate for like 90 degrees every time?
No, it's just zeroing it. So if I made it, if this was originally, it's not perfectly 90 degrees. There's no way you were absolutely facing to the left, So if it was like skewed a little bit like that, and I zero it, it's not turning it 90 degrees. It's just making it 0.
Does it know like which side is the axis that I'm facing?
It doesn't know what side you're facing, but it knows which side the program is expecting. So Z forward is 0. Whatever you're doing, it just undoes that. If that makes sense. The software is just doing its job. It's pretty stupid. You're the smart one. You're driving the software. Software is only as smart as the operator. All right, so now I have character facing forward and zeroed out hips. That's a pretty good T-pose. It's a little lopsided, but that's all right. If you want to get, sometimes in the perspective views, it can be hard to tell. So if you go into view, you can go into an orthographic view from the front. And here we can see, I don't know who this mocap actor was, but they really have some.
So unprofessional. Amateur.
It also could be just bad calibration. It could be that the camera's got a little screwed up, in motive, where we select all the points again and we recalibrate the arms. It could be that there was just a little drift that caused that, or it could be the performer's just a little has a lean to one side. So these orthographic views can be useful to line things up. To be honest, you do want it to be perfect, but bounds of reason. Is it going to cause that big of a difference? Maybe, maybe not. If you wanted to be absolutely perfect, though, yeah, I would go into the shoulder joints and I would also zero them. I'm going to go back to perspective view. One other useful thing in Motion Builder to show is this display tab up top here. If you're ever using Motion Builder and, oh no, my skeleton disappeared, I can't see it, it might be because you accidentally went into one of these other views. So the keyboard shortcut for these is Control-A, or you can just select them up top. With this Control-A cycles through the views, so I can do models only. Doesn't show any skeletons. The skeletons are still there. They're just hidden. I can do X-ray, where I see the model and the skeleton together. And then just normal, which is the mesh is covering up the skeleton, but the skeletons are still there. So model only, X-ray, and normal. Okay. Next step, the most fun step. We need to do what's called characterizing our characters. We brought in our avatar, we brought in the motion capture data, we made sure they're both facing positive Z, we zeroed out to get that, they're in T poses. Now we have to do what's called characterizing. Characterizing takes all the joints and tells the program that this is the shoulder, this is the arm, this is the forearm, this is the hand, this is the leg, this is the hips. The program doesn't know that until you tell it that, okay? Perhaps you've done this before, maybe in another program where you have to click on the leg and say, yep, that's left leg up, that's left leg down, that's left foot. It takes a really long time because there's a lot of joints. Luckily, with humanoids, we can just do the hips and everything else will solve automatically. So to do that, we go over to this other menu on the right side in the Assets browser, Characters and Templates, Characters, and this one called Character right here. The avatar with the blue hair. It's kind of like the mascot of Motion Builder. Their name's Mia. Mia the avatar. So I want to click on Character and drag it onto the hips for my avatar and for the mocap data. You can drag it on in the viewport. You can drag it in on the navigator. I'm going to drag it on the navigator. So I'm going to grab Character, dragging it over, drop it on the hips of my avatar, and everything disappears. But if you looked really closely, down here, it says Characterize. It's like a confirmation menu that pops up. You click Characterize, and it pops up this window that says, hey, is your character facing positive Z? Yes, it is. We did that already. Is it a biped or a quadruped? It's a biped. All right. Done. Yeah.
Did you drag and drop it on your Ready Player Me rig or the motion capture?
We're going to do both, but I did the Ready Player Me one first. It doesn't really matter which one you do first. You just need to characterize both. So now if I go into my navigator in Motion Builder and I look in the characters section, in characters, I have this thing called character, which is the default name for characters in Motion Builder. I highly suggest that you right click on this and rename it. I'm just going to call it RPM for Ready Player Me. Now we're going to do the same thing to the mocap skeleton. So find the hips for the mocap skeleton. They're right there. You can drop it on in the window. You can drop it on in the navigator. I'm going to grab Character from the asset browser and drag it onto the hips and let go. Everything disappears. Pops up confirmation menu that says Characterize. Click it. Biped, positive Z, yes. Done.
So what this is essentially doing is telling the computer that like this skeleton is a character.
Yes. And this is what all the joints are. You're saying this is the hips. Now go out and find the arms and the head and the spine and all that. And it will do that. Unless you want to do it manually. Which we can. And for more advanced things, you have to sometimes. So now if I go to Character down in the navigator again, now you see we have two of them. Default name Character, which I'm just going to rename mocap, and RPM for Ready Player Me character. Mocap. All right. So we've done all that stuff, and we still haven't had the animation applied to our Ready Player Me character yet. But now's the moment. So I'm going to go and click on my Ready Player Me character. And there's a couple different places that you can do this. I prefer to do it in the top right, but other people like to do it in other places. So in the top right here, this is the character controls window. Two drop-down menus. Whoops. Two drop-down menus. The character is the avatar, the thing that you want to put the motion on. And then the source, where the animation information is coming from. So my character, you see everything, all of our characters are listed in here. So you could do it backwards if you wanted to, which wouldn't really make much sense because there is no animation on the Ready Player Me character. So Ready Player Me is our character, and the source is mocap. As soon as I click this, fingers crossed, the Ready Player Me avatar should snap back to where the Ready Player Me or where the motion capture data is back here.
Is it fine if you don't zero the arm?
You mean the T-pose arm?
Yeah.
If you want to be perfect, no, it's not fine. But I think it's good enough for right now.
Okay.
Also, notice that I didn't zero out the position in the world. The position of this character in the world was determined where you stood in the room when we recorded, right? You can change that position here. You can change that position in Unreal just by dragging them around. We could zero out all of your translation around the room, so you would just be doing your fights and stuff while standing all in place. And you wouldn't move around at all. It would look really weird because your legs would be falling, you would fall down, and it would all happen in the same spot. All the rotations would be happening, but none of the movement would be happening. It'd be very weird. But you could do that.
That's some actual acting.
If you did that for a real performance, that would be impressive. All right, so source, mocap. Boom.
Wow, it's really sticking out.
I know, look at that. Very unprofessional. So now, if I click the play button, oh yeah. Beautiful. And this is where those different display modes come in handy. Control A. Now I'm just viewing the skeleton. Or just the mesh, I mean. That little bounce at the end, too. You really went flying.
Nice. I think I noticed like my hands twitching whenever like that.
Yeah. You know, when you get close to the ground, there's the potential for occlusion is really big. You have your wrist turned over. A limited number of cameras can see the markers. Stuff like that's going to happen. But otherwise, pretty good. Like, it's not like your arms going behind your back when you're flying across the room. There's no huge glitches, except when you're on the floor. And, you know, here there is some occlusion through the ground because the mesh is a slightly different size, and the avatar has a jacket on, and that sort of stuff. This arm is going through the body. You're not going to be able. That's stuff that has to be cleaned up in post production. I had I think I probably showed it at the beginning of class. Motion capture project did a while ago called Dubstep Dinosaurs, and it was all these cardboard costumes that I converted into 3D models. So for the Tyrannosaurus Rex, you know how they have little arms, right? So there's two cutouts in the cardboard that the arms for the avatar that had to go through the 3D costume. Very particular spot, right? The holes are only this big around the wrist. You don't want the wrist busting out of the 3D model and stuff, right? You want them to stay there. So had a lot of cleanup that had to be done. You know, for the mocap shoot, I performed for that mocap shoot, as only I can. I tried to keep my wrist in position, but I couldn't put a piece of cardboard on them or anything because I would block all the markers on my body. Probably could have rigged up something that was, you know, more thin to keep the arms in position, but we just cleaned it up in post. But it was a lot of work to do. So things like this, where the arm goes through the body, it's unavoidable. You have to clean it up in post-production. And all we can do is we can grab onto the elbow joint or the shoulder joint and just move its position out a little bit. Yeah.
So, like, for example, with Isamo, like, the parameters change the arm height. You know, sometimes if you import something, it's like going to the mesh. Is that essentially the same thing that we're going to be doing? Or, like, would you just, like, basically add an addition of, like, X amount of degrees to, like, the elbow or the shoulder?
Essentially, you mean these sort of presets? Yeah, basically. Because these are just general settings, you know. It's never going to be as perfect as if an artist did it custom, right? But that's what makes this software so easy to use. It's just a slider. any goofball can use the slider, right? How many goofballs can use Motion Builder to change keyframes? So exactly, right? Like arm space is way up high now. When I do a pose that's a little more recognizable. Because she has an enormous outfit on that comes up. If I go the other way, the arms will probably be in the jacket. Yeah. Yeah, same idea. I'm not sure which joint it is. It's probably maybe just the shoulder joint. But yeah, basically.
So in Motion Builder, you can actually like change your elbow orientation in every frame.
Oh, you're crazy. You want to do it every frame?
No. I mean, like after a certain frame, it's like, say I don't want my arms to be like this in the beginning, but then like in the end, if it's tucked into the jacket, I'll just like do it after that point where it tucks into the jacket.
100%. That's, yeah, we're going to look at that in the second half of class. I'll show you how to do additive animation on top of your existing animation. So we're not modifying the original keyframes. We're just putting like an additive layer on top of them. Like this, you know, when she is, what is this called? When she is reacting, if I crank this up to 100%, now I have added to both shoulder joints, let's just say, you know, whatever amount of degrees, right? It's not modifying the original keyframes. It's just adding a number on a rotational value on top of the existing keyframes. Could you do that every frame? Absolutely. Would you be insane to do that every frame? Absolutely. At a certain point with motion capture data, if you're going in and you're keyframing every frame, you might as well just do like traditional animation, stop motion animation, or animate it manually in a 3D program. Like, what's the point of doing motion capture data at that point? Do you have to do that sometimes in small bursts? Absolutely. Where the collision through the jacket on the floor, we could probably get away with doing this just one time while laying on the floor, because you don't really move much when you're on the floor, you know, because you're dead. But like this part, where here, even the neck is a little problematic. Here the arms are fine. It only becomes a problem right there. So I would set a keyframe here. It says additive, let's just say shoulder. It might be more than the shoulder. Additive keyframe on the shoulder, 0, because we're not adding anything there. And then when I wanted to add on, I could put a keyframe there, bump it out, and that would stay there for the rest of the animation until I modify it again and set another keyframe. You know, like right there, I don't need to set a keyframe every frame because you're dead. You're not moving. But when you get back up and come back to life, then we got to change it again. Things like this glitch on the hand right here, to clean that up. One, I could try to clean that up in Motive, which we haven't talked about yet. Otherwise, I could go into the actual keyframes for that wrist joint and just get rid of any jittery ones. Just kill them. Remove them. Delete them.
We can have them stay to be a nice death twitch.
We can add more. Yeah. Beautiful. Bravo. Looks great. Okay, so we've brought in the avatar, brought in the motion capture data into Motion Builder, characterized the characters, merged them together, but it's not export ready yet. If I wanted to, we haven't cleaned up yet. We're not going to do that right now. We'll do that after break. But I couldn't take this into Unreal right now. I need to do one more thing. I need to do what's called plotting this to skeleton. I need to take the motion capture, because right now the motion capture data is just kind of streaming to the avatar skeleton. I haven't taken that data and baked the zeros and ones into the actual avatar skeleton. That's what we do next. It's called plotting, P-L-O-T, plot. So a couple different places to do this, but I like to do this up here on the top menu in this blue button. Oops, plot. click the little blue icon. You can't miss it. Go down to bake, plot to skeleton. After break, we will be plotting to control rig rather than a skeleton. But skeleton for right now. So blue button, bake plot to skeleton. Depending on how long your animation is, it already finished for me. So now I could go in and I could delete all the other skeletons. I could delete the original motion capture skeleton because it's actually baked into the skeleton of the avatar now. The keyframes have been baked to the timeline. And that's what Unreal needs to be able to import an animation.
Does that necessarily mean that like the source just disappeared because like the source and your model is the same thing now?
It doesn't disappear because I didn't delete it, but it did become unselected here now. See, it's not. There is no source because we don't need the source anymore. It's been baked to that. So that's what Unreal needs. It needs the animation applied as keyframes for every single frame for the duration of the animation. Another thing that we could do is we could trim our animation. This 0 right here on top is the endpoint. Oops, where's my cursor? Oh. Maybe I'll go in and I'll cut out this T-pose and I'll just start right here. So like frame 34 is what it says. So I'll just type 34 over here. And then, I don't know, where do we want to end? Let's end dead. 432. So I'll go over here, 432. So now I've trimmed the workspace to just that time. Other things that you can do is there is a loop button. There is a speed button. So if I want to see this epic death in, 0.1 speed. Yeah. Wow, look at that. He slid across the floor. No bruising? So the slowing down the speed isn't just for aesthetic. It's useful as an animation tool, as we'll see when we start to modify the keyframes after we come back from break. If you have animation that is really fast movement, your character's doing real fast dance or something, or they're flying across the room, you want to slow it down. It's going to help you be able to see, is the arm going through the body? Is it not? If it's playing fast, it's hard to tell. Slow it down. All right. Now we can export this baby. Also highly recommend to just save throughout doing this. But now I can save and export this. So save as. Call this Epic Death, FBX binary, saving it to my desktop. Look, check this out. Now it has two animations. The original animation, which was the T-pose from Mixamo, and then the death animation. You call this whatever you want. I'm not going to export the T-pose, so I'll uncheck that, save. And if I open up Unreal, it comes in like animations that we've brought in the past. Same thing. Remember when we brought in animations before, animation from Mixamo and other places, we brought in the skeletal mesh and then we bring in the animations. You don't need to bring in the skeletal mesh every single time you import into Unreal. You just need to bring it in once to create the skeleton. Come on. Oh, I remember the penguins. Any questions?
Can you make Unreal a little faster?
Always go slower when I'm sitting up here.
I pretend to not look at it. And get it. Probably done.
So when you export it, you just file motion file export.
That's going to export just the skeleton. If you do save as, it will export the mesh and the skeleton. Which, I guess if you're importing the skeleton, the mesh separately, like I'm going to do right now, that's fine. We create a new folder here. Let's call this mocap.
I just realized these are all like
What is
I don't know.
BCK? I think that's a motive file, isn't it? All right, I'm going to import the mesh here. Mocap, T-pose mesh. I want to import the mesh. It's a skeletal mesh. It doesn't have a skeleton yet because it hasn't been imported into Unreal before. I don't want to import animations here. I do want to create materials and textures, even though they're going to be messed up because I didn't export them correctly from Blender yet. So now the mesh is imported. Notice it did default back to a T-pose or an A-pose, even though it's called T-pose, but that's all right for right now. Actually, not just for right now. That's just all right because we already merged them together. Import again. Let's import the animation. Epic Death. So now I'm importing just an animation. I don't need to import the mesh. I'm just importing the animation file. I need to tell it to use an existing skeleton. Usually Unreal finds the correct skeleton, but if you have very similarly named things, it might have trouble finding it. So you might have to manually assign it. Animation, good, 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 good. Everything else is good. Import. All right, double click. Epic Death. So material problem aside, there it is. The trimmed take. We got rid of the T-poses. We got rid of getting back up. We didn't clean anything up, but the animation is now in Unreal. Yeah, that's another problem. But motion capture wise, we're good. Your lovely performance is now on a trench coat, bob, glasses wearing lady in Unreal Engine. How's it feel?
Nice.
I'll clap for you. Yeah, I could import the textures separately, but we've done that before. So why don't I do this on one more time, but with something more badass looking. Or this person has a sword already. Is there anybody else that has a sword? What do you think, mutant or weird fighting person?
I like sword.
Okay, you like the sword? All right. Download. With skin. Hold on a second. Character. I want to get rid of the animation. Where? They used to have an X here that you could click. Browse characters. Oh, right there. Yeah, you're right. There we go. T-pose with the sword. Looks like you. Download. T-pose. Save as. Maria with pop prop. JJ Ong. I don't know what that means. Okay. Now, if I had other characters that use the same skeleton, I could swap them in without having to go and retarget them again because they're using the same skeleton, right? Question?
Yeah, I know like the our motion capture, we can capture the fingers.
Mhm.
In that rig, there are fingers, that individual fingers, right? So like, if my character has, what's called as like mittens, is that gonna cause issues?
But your character has mittens?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Walking with Wonder, you have mittens?
Well, maybe not my common character. The one I'm using right now.
They have mittens.
Is that gonna like cause issues with this process?
Is there just one finger joint? Or
there's two.
Should be fine. Yeah. Because the hierarchy is still the same. I think there's just less fingers. And probably, I imagine, one of those fingers is probably still named index. So it will just take the index finger movement. Maybe. Hard to say with certainty. All right, let's bring in a crazy sword lady. So file, open, running through the same process again, but just a little bit more quickly. Where did I save this? Maria with prop. Don't save. Open. There they are. Beautiful. Merge. Find the motion capture data. Where did I put that? There we go. Merge. Skeletons are missing. That's probably because I am in model only view, which is true. So I didn't panic. I'm just changing the display. There they are. That's what we did before. You're right. Lucas's arms are a little saggy too. Symmetrically saggy though. All right, so let's delete. Do we want to keep you still? You don't have much sword fighting. You want to keep you?
You can delete me.
Oh, delete you? Okay. All right, so I'm selecting one of the skeletons. Remember, you have to select all the branches. So if you right-click on it, go to select branches, it will select everything, which means I can delete all of the branches. See, they're all green now. So now if I right-click, delete, confirm, okay, goodbye. Okay, so same problem as before, not facing positive Z. So I'm going to select the hips, and I'm going to right-click on the hips, 0, rotation. Now they are, oh wow, really lopsided. That's fine though. All right, now they're facing. Now we got to characterize. So we want to characterize onto the hips. So remember, I can go down to the asset browser, grab character, and I got to drag it onto the hips of the mocap and the hips of the avatar. So characterize, I'm going to drag it onto the hips of the Mixamo character first. Characterize, biped, done. I'm going to rename them to, I don't know, warrior. I'm going to do the same thing to the other one. Select the hips on Lucas's mocap data, drag it onto hips, characterize, biped. Good. And now we have 2 characters down here. I'm going to name the one that's named character, which is the default name. Rename that to mocap. These names are arbitrary. It's whatever you want to name it. If you want to keep them both character, that's fine, but you're going to be confused. Okay, click on the warrior now. And remember, we want to go up to character controls up top. We are in positive Z. T-pose is a little lopsided. I could clean that up if I wanted to before I merge them, but it's okay for right now. And I'm going to set my source to mocap data for the warrior character. As soon as I do that, it should snap to it. And if I play this now, oh, time for some really cool sword strikes here. Oh, slow-mo. Let's go normal speed. Whoa! Your swords clash. Didn't you see the shake? Yeah, you can modify all this stuff. We're going to talk about overriding keyframes when we come back from break. You can see this is pretty good. Even with the sword and all the armor and weird stuff going on, there's a little bit of occlusion of the wrist through the head, because Lucas wasn't wearing some big cool armor when they were doing that. But even the sword seems pretty good. There might be some times where the sword gets dragged through the ground because he probably never expected to have his performance put on this crazy character. With the heels too. On the tippy toes. Look at this performance. It really went for it. I think y'all probably get the blue ribbon for your performances. It was pretty good. I was slightly worried somebody was going to get hurt.
I watched the video like that and being like, oh my god, are you okay? He's like on the floor, like just dying. Like, are you okay? And then like a ball fell off and he was like, oh my god. And I thought he broke his arm or something. He hit the ground so hard.
I broke the bowl.
You're just selling the animation. All right, cool. So that looks pretty good. We're not doing any cleanup or adjustments right now. I love just how rocking back on the feet and stuff, all that really came through really well, especially with this character. That's cool. So cleanup, which we'll get into after break. Cleanup is a multi-step process. First cleanup is there glitches. Glitches that are caused by occlusion, or a marker fell off, or a camera missed me, or I don't know, some gamma ray burst from outer space shot through the cameras while we were performing. Some sort of weird glitch that we need to clean up. The next form of cleanup is, that character's arm is going through their leg because they're just a different size, right? So it's not a glitch so much as just a proportion problem that you need to adjust for. So glitches aside, let's bring this into Unreal as well. So remember, click the blue button, Again, multiple places to do this, but I like to click the blue button, bake to plot, plot to skeleton. After break, we'll be plotting to control rig.
Is the translation going to stay with the skeleton? So say if you like import this into Unreal with my model, are they going to interact alright?
This is the same take, right?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't change any of that. Let's check it out. Oh my gosh, that was an unplanned bonus. Let's see. Bake plot to skeleton. All right, done. I did trim the animation, so maybe they might not line up. Does anybody remember what number I started the first animation at? I don't.
You can also do the trimming in Unreal too.
Yeah, but I already trimmed yours.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we could look. 497. How many frames is this? 398. 99 frames shorter in the beginning? Maybe. I'll just export the whole thing and we'll just eye it up. Are we sure this is the same take?
Yeah.
Oh, he's stabbing you here. He's not swinging his sword. He's impaling you here.
Right.
Oh, the sword's just flipped. I get it. Okay. That's why I thought it was a different take. All right, now file, save as. I guess we'll call it Maria because that's this character's name. Maria fight 01. Save. We don't need the T-pose. Save. Go to Unreal. Oops. Go to Unreal. Titles. Let's do a new level. Basic. Content drawer. Let's add a new folder here. So we'll call this Maria because that's the character's name. Import. Mocap.
So right now, what are you importing exactly?
I am importing the animation that we just did.
And then we manually apply the skeleton.
Well, I wasn't going to do that this time because I'm lazy. But best practice is to import the mesh as is without any animation, right? Just the rig and the mesh, right? And textures and materials and all that stuff. And then to import the animation separately with the mesh button unchecked, so it's just the animation file. The animation files are very tiny because it's just data, right? It doesn't include all the textures and the materials, which can make files really, really big. And take a while to import too, if it's a long animation. Since you called me out, I guess I'll go and do it the proper way. Import. If it's just one character that you're only importing with one animation, you might as well just import it all in one go. But if it's something, a character that has, 70 different animations, then you should do them all as animations with the mesh separate. Desktop. Where is this character? I don't know. Maria with prop. Import mesh. Import skeleton. No import animations. Skeleton is none because it doesn't exist yet. It's getting created. Create materials. Import textures. That's all fine. Import. So now I have my character in Unreal, but no animations. Notice there isn't even an animation tab up here. It's just the skeleton, the mesh, and then the physics actor to do like clothing stuff. Now I'm going to import the animation that we just exported from Motion Builder. Maria Fight 01. No mesh on this one because it's just the animation. That's the skeleton. Not the best skeleton name, but the default. Import. So now if I was to click back on the mesh again, remember it didn't have an animation option. Oh, it still doesn't have an animation option. What's the deal? Not sure why the animation option's missing. But if I click on the animation itself, here's the epic fight in Unreal with the jump. And if we brought these into the world together, these are two very differently dressed characters. Assuming that we make both characters translations or transformations 0, they should line up together, which looks like they do. So let's check it out. Epic death animation, fight animation. Oh, the trim. Yeah, I don't know how much we should trim by, though. See, this one starts out 1,002. Okay, like 1.5. Go into this animation. I guess we could just try to do it manually and set the offset, set the initial position rather than trimming where we're kind of stuck with it. Just gonna let's just see how this looks. That's a pretty good guess. No. Oh. the other one restarted. Pretty good. You know, we could probably give this character a sword as well, although in the interest of time it might just be a cube.
At least the cylinder.
Okay, we can do a cylinder. Cylinder. Scale. One. Attach it. I guess I have to do it outside the character. Cylinder, copy, paste. Attach to. Oh, because this is not. Attach to. Well, not cooperating right now. It's not letting me attach for some reason. Oh, I know why. Because it's not a movable object. Cylinder attached to epic death. Which hand are you holding this in? The right hand? Right hand. So now the cube's going to come along for the ride. Good. So now we can scale it down. placing it in the hand now, roughly. Special request for tilting the sword. Maybe a little more. Maybe make it a little bit more skinny. No.
Have you really doing more on it too?
Oh, this is it? Oh, we could turn it into a lightsaber or something too. It takes some finagling to get it to be in the exact same right position. But, you know, you get the idea. Oh. Yeah, so motion capture, or we got our character first. So wherever your avatar is coming from, if anybody has a peculiar spot that they're bringing their avatar from, maybe you want to run that by me. You could make your own avatar too. Doesn't have to be rigged, because you can use Mixamo to rig it. So wherever the character is from, whether it's Ready Player Me or some sort of 3D site or whatever, as long as it's a humanoid character, 2 arms, 2 legs, I guess it doesn't need all of its limbs even, but just the positions for the limbs, that will work with what we just did. So we bring them into Motion Builder, we bring the avatar in, we bring the motion capture data in that you recorded, we zero out and make them face positive Z, we sync them together after characterizing them, and then we plot to skeleton, we send it to Unreal, and we profit. Sound good?
Can we expand on the profit part?
No, that's your problem. Any questions besides profiting? Y'all are motion builder experts now. I think it's fairly straightforward, as long as you just follow what we did. The difficulty comes in the customization and the cleanup of things. Like, I just want to get that hand from going through the body, or I want to put that sword in the hand so it looks better. Those are the difficult things. Going through this process and getting the motion capture data onto the avatar, that's not that difficult. You just follow the tutorial. It's the artistry behind it that is the hard part, and that's what takes all the time. We will get into a little bit of that artistry when we come back from break, and then I also want to leave enough time to, you know what, why don't we just render it out now? So I feel like with the artistry of the motion capture cleanup, we might run out of time. I think we can do this in 10 minutes. So in Unreal, after you have your scene, whatever it is that your scene is, I don't know, maybe I should bring some, what is ice cool? Is there any props in here? After you build your scene out, you know, we obviously need some epic, like, terrain and stuff, right? Now it's even more epic. Yeah, now it looks good, right? Wow. Looks intense now. After you have your scene, you know, I'm just previewing the animations right now by clicking play, but we looked at using the sequencer before, which is how I want you to animate things. So adding a level sequence up top, little clackboard, add level sequence, fight, whatever. Now I can add these animations to my level sequence just by dragging them in. I can add the animations to the animation tracks. Epic Death. Fight. I think they're going to line up anymore. I think I need to trim this one a little bit. A little bit more. There's a sword clash right there. Good enough. A little lagged. A couple frames. Still a little bit off.
Is this motion blur the default in Unreal?
Yeah, it's turned on by default. Close enough for right now. I want to get the rest of the animation. I forget how this was long, but we definitely want to get the big jump. And the pull out. Pretty much the whole epic death. Let's just set the end right there. End of the film. So now this is all animating on a timeline. Cool. Now I'm going to add a camera. We briefly talked about cameras before, but now we're going to do it formally because it's important to have cameras that you can render out from. There's a lot of different ways to get a camera in Unreal. Easiest way if you have sequencer open is to click the little camera icon. Camera. Clicking the camera icon does two things. It creates a Syn camera actor, which is the actual camera itself, and it creates this thing called a camera cut. Camera cut is the director track that basically says this camera is the one that is currently playing. You could have multiple cameras, or you could have the same camera and make it change positions. That's up to you. But now I have this camera that I can drive around. If I click on the camera icon, that means I'm looking through the camera. Like we've talked about before, remember it says pilot active. Now I am the camera myself. So I could go in here and I could set, I don't know, let's just set a keyframe here at the beginning for the camera. Transformation. I'll just have it move. Slow pan. And I'll have it jump back here. And then keep moving. And then as you get tossed, maybe I'll have the camera itself get tossed too. This is not the most ambitious camera movement. Yeah. I would have multiple cameras where we cut between them, but I'm doing limited time here. Let's set them up. Oops. Camera just hangs out there, maybe. It slowly pans up, gets low. Everything's out of focus right now, that's fine. Yeah, good enough for now. Could also animate the focus itself too. There's the focus distance that you can animate with keyframes. Make things in and out of focus, which is really cool to play with. But we've gone over the cameras before, but the main point I'm trying to show you is rendering it out. A lot more epic with camera movement than just fixed camera. You need like a camera shot, close up on the one character, close up on the other one, like right before they get stabbed, wiping the sweat away, zoom in on the fire as they burn, all that good stuff. So after we have the animation that we're happy with, the world that we're happy with, the camera movement that we're happy with, we go ahead and render it out. So to render it out, click the little clackboard here. Oops, let's not do that mode. So why am I only in, is that not turned on? Weird. Oh, that's strange. For some reason, the default Unreal Engine 5 renderer was not turned on in the plugins. Not sure why. So I'm just saving right now. I'm going to restart. So when you render out from Unreal, it renders an image sequence. You can also render out DNX HD or HR files or ProRes files, but you need to turn those plugins on. For some reason, the movie render queue was off. That should always be on by default. I'm not sure why it wasn't for me. But I'm also going to turn on the ProRes plugin, ProRes Media plugin. Yeah, I say that as a PC fanboy too. It's a good codec. But you know what's funny? If anybody using Unreal Engine on a Mac, for some reason, you can't render out ProRes from Unreal Engine on a Mac, even though ProRes created by Apple. That's Epic's fault, but I don't know why. I was freaking out about it one time because I was at a school on just Macs and it wouldn't render. I couldn't figure out what the problem was. Sure enough. I don't know if it's fixed now. That was a couple months ago. Okay, I'm going to turn those plugins on. Restart. Yeah, I'll usually render out as a ProRes while I'm testing, but I do a lot of compositing, so I usually render out as EXR image sequences. But for you all, ProRes is fine. All right, beautiful. Oh, that's strange. If for some reason you have red icons, red skeleton icons in this case, it's not always a skeleton, but if it's red, that means that it lost its connection with the asset for some reason. Pro tip, if you click on the little wrench icon up top here in Sequencer, and you go to Advanced, and you click Fix Actor References, it almost always fixes it. Okay, now I'm going to render it. Movie render queue. So I click the little clackboard now. It pops up the movie render queue. The movie render queue, there's some different settings that we can mess around with here. If we click on the settings, currently unsaved config, it's going to ask me, what do I want to save it out as? The default is JPEG sequence. I'm going to go in here and pick ProRes and turn off the JPEG sequence. I don't need ProRes 444 XQ. I'm just going to do proxy for right now. This is just a test. Output is where you want to save it to and what resolution. That's fine for right now. You know what? I'll just put it on my desktop. Desktop output, frames per second. That's all good. Sometimes you can give. Well, if you wanted to export just a specific custom range, you can put that here. And yeah, that's all good. And then there's also more advanced things that we can do with anti-aliasing and to make it look extra special and stuff. But we don't need to worry about that right now. Just click accept, render. This window will pop up. It's just a preview. Boom. Boom. Why doesn't your face have textures? Whoosh. I'm hoping everybody does Foley sound effects for their videos. I want you with a microphone doing the action sounds. Be lovely. Or like finding whatever. Splash. Just doing. Yeah. Oh, that was a good one. I'm recording too. Still, right? Saved it. Not the best microphone. But let's check it out. Where's this baby at?
The preview is not playing at a regular frame, right?
No, that's just a preview frame rate. This baby gets saved out too. Saved it to my desktop. Where's that? Oh, there it is. Oh, amazing.
Nice.
Incredible. Put 5 minutes of effort into this and look how epic it is. It's because of the amazing performances. A what? Oh, because I use VLC. And that's so the expectation is that you render out your films like that, right? This isn't a performance. This isn't a live thing. This is just a rendered video. That's approximately 30 seconds. Okay. Questions? All right. Let's take a break. Let's come back and let's come. Oh, yeah. Wow. Epic fight sequence.
Oh, lightsaber effect. How do you do that? Just changing the texture?
Nope. It's just numbers. Just color red and just multiplying it by a lot and plugging it into a emissive color. don't know if did I tell this story in this class about my old After Effects class that I used to do, where I brought in a stick and we had to do lightsabers.
Yeah.
Did you in classes before?
Yeah, graduate class, mixed reality filmmaking. That's what it's called. So it's not really motion capture, unless we get an LED wall this fall, which is maybe. It's just all about compositing in Unreal. So shooting real video, doing the motion tracking on it, and then syncing it up in Unreal.
You ever undergraduate?
What?
Do you undergraduate or graduate classes?
No, that's not allowed.
That's sarcastic.
No.
Oh no, it's not allowed. No, it's not.
I don't know if it's officially allowed, but you can. Not my class. Just let anybody in there. Okay, let's do more motion builder. So we're looking at motion builder. I think is the best mocap retargeting program out there. But you can do a lot of this in other programs as well. You could do this in Maya for the most part. Same general workflow. This system over here even looks the same in Maya. The human IK system. I'm not sure about Blender, but I imagine you can do most of this in there as well. But Motion Builder is what I would suggest. So let's look at tweaking some of our animation here. So if I have this character has is this, whose hips is this? Let's look at the skeleton here. Okay. This character has different joints that I'm going to open all up right now. So if I right click in, oh wow, I should have paused during break. I'm still recording, baby. Whoops. That's all right. It's going to be a long one. If I right click on the hierarchy in the navigator in Motion Builder, remember I can go to expand to selection, or collapse, or select branches, expand branches, and they all pop open. So picking the joint in the viewport and picking it in the navigator, same general thing, right? I'm going to go back and repeat the process that we did earlier, but this time I'm going to do it instead of baking to skeleton, I'm going to bake to a control rig. Fortunately, if your teacher had a little bit of foresight, he would have saved this out, but it doesn't look like I did. So I already plotted to skeleton, so I'm just going to start a new one again. Let's do a new character this time. I'm not going to pay $70 for a werewolf. Let's just do this weird mutant guy. Okay. There we go. So this will probably be a lot of problem with collision through the body. We shall see. So download T-pose. Just like we did before, this is all the exact same stuff. I haven't done anything new yet. Might as well close down Blender. Close down Parsec 2. Motion Builder. So File, Open. Oh, I didn't download it yet. Did I download it? I think I downloaded it. Download. obviously don't know where I downloaded it, so I'm going to download it again. Download. Oh, okay, I didn't save it. There we go. So mutant. Naming convention I usually like to do is SM underscore for, no, SK underscore for skeletal mesh, mutant, and then it's pose. Just put it in T-pose. So going to motion builder, finding that now. Not in the folder. Okay. Stop mocap. There we go. Mutant. Good. Open it up. T-pose. Beautiful. He looks so tough. Okay. So now let's get the mocap data. So merge. Browse to someone else's lovely mocap data. Anybody want to volunteer their mocap data? First one, Dora's Lost Explorers. This dude really looks like he's in Dora's Lost Explorers. Which one? Escaping? Arrival? There's been a lot of death in this class, so let's not do death.
Wait, Dora's Lost Explorers death?
No, spoiler alert.
Arrival Tori.
Let's do Arrival?
No,
Don't do Arrival. Escaping? Alright, we're gonna do Escaping. Escaping 1 is not good? Alright, let's... Oh, right. The first takes are always terrible. Escaping 3 is excellent, though. There it is. Oh, look at that. Positive Z. Great. Let's see what we got here. Looks great. All right, I'm gonna select, just to clean things up, I'm gonna select one of the skeletons and get rid of it. No offense, Michelle.
You just deleted the hero door.
Delete, confirm. You don't have to delete it. I'm just doing this to keep it more clean. You could have multiple characters being driven in Motion Builder if you wanted to.
So, but then when you export them, are they going to show up as two skeletal mesh in
That's up to you.
Unreal?
That's up to you.
They can be.
It can be. Actually, in Unreal, I don't think it can be. I've never tried. But my hunch is that it's not going to import two different skeletons in one file.
Yeah.
Not in Unreal. I don't think so. Yeah. You know, fundamentally, this is where you have to remember that Unreal Engine is for making first-person shooters games, right? So this sort of 3D stuff where you can do these other things doesn't work like that in a gaming engine. Okay, so we have the one here. I'm going to go ahead and characterize both of them. They're already facing positive Z. They're already zeroed out pretty good, I think. Maybe not. I need to zero out the hips. Because it's close, but it's not perfect. There we go. If you wanted to do the shoulder joints and knees, you could also zero them. So now it's perfect T-pose. Yeah. Okay, let's characterize. So remember the menu down here. Characters, character. Drag that onto the hips. I'm going to rename it like I usually do. Cap. Character. Hips. Characterize. Biped. This character. Mutant. Okay. So we have the two characters down below. So now I'm going to take the mutant and give it the source of the mocap data. Notice there is a little bit of a scale discrepancy here between the actor and the avatar. Well, let's check it out. This is such a delicate run. Maybe the mutant wants to walk like that. It's perfectly fine. But this is a good example of knowing your avatar ahead of time so you can perform appropriately. Not that that's inappropriate, but it actually works pretty well. There isn't a ton of collision. It's a little bit in the body right there. But the legs look fine. Okay, that looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and save this just while I'm working. Just call it mutant. I'm gonna call it MB for motion builder underscore mutant. Characterized before I go ahead and plot it to a control rig so I can go back easily. Okay, so if you are happy with that, you can go ahead and bake it to the skeleton. If we want to play around with it a little bit and animate it further, we can do that by baking it to a control rig. You can animate the skeleton too, and you can animate in Unreal if you would like to. It's not that great to animate in Unreal. It's just not really made for that. These are features that Epic is working on, starting to bring into Unreal more so. But I really suggest doing the animation in a 3D program like Motion Builder. So I'm going to go ahead and bake this to a control rig. You pick FK, IK, forward, and inverse kinematics.
Did you save a copy of the project?
I saved it before I plotted the control rig. Yeah. Just so if I mess up, I can go back. All right, so this yellow skeleton with the red and blue balls on the joints is called a control rig. The control rig is cool because it's going to allow me to do things like nothing. Let me clear this up. Let me get rid of there we go. Why does this not want to play? I know. Yeah, the blue ones don't want to be animated. So a control rig is cool because it works with what's called FK and IK kinematics, which means if you move one joint, it has constraints so that other joints come for the ride. So, for instance, when it moves its foot, it makes sense that its knee bends. When I move my foot, my knee bends, right? If this was a skeleton, that wouldn't necessarily be the case. You could actually change the scaling between the foot and the knee rather than having the proportional distance between the two stay the same and have the knee animate. You would just shorten the bone, which is not really what we would want to do. Oops, now I have both selected. I don't want to do that. So if I wanted to, maybe I'm going to go in and I'm going to hide these other skeletons. Select. How can I hide this? View, display, model visibility, model display. I was just going to delete. I'll just delete it. Select branches. I'm just cleaning things up so we can just pay attention to the control rig. Guess it doesn't want to delete. Oh well. Let's select all of the control rig, select branches, and maybe just move it off to the side so it's not on top of that skeleton. Let's set a keyframe here. There we go. All right. So if I wanted to animate on top of this character, I'm not destroying the underlying motion capture. I'm just changing some of the values using what's called an additive animation layer on top of it. If I look down here in this menu, key controls and animation layers. Animation layers function like layers that you've used in perhaps Photoshop or something like that. The animation layer on top of the base animation is going to be an additive influence layer on top of that base animation. What you don't want to be doing is going into the base animation and then zooming in to your scene and looking at every single keyframe for every single joint's movement. If there are problems with your animation, this is a spot where you could go in and select keyframes and delete them. By holding down Shift, you can select multiples. You can click on individual ones and delete them. You could look at them at the curves, or you could help identify any sort of problems. This doesn't really have any problems here. So I'm going to go back to the main. Yeah.
Wait, what did you click again for all the keyframes to come up in your timeline?
So there's no keyframes in my animation layer yet because I haven't done anything in it. So I just clicked base animation. When you click base animation, all the keyframes will show up there. But it might say, if you're zoomed way out, it might say too many keys for edit. And at that point, you should just close up your computer and go home. That just means you need to zoom in with the little slider here above the timeline. You just grab onto the blue handles on the sides.
So So if you delete a keyframe, what is gonna be replaced by? Just like linear information?
Yeah. If you delete a bunch of them, then it could become a problem. But this is where if you had, if the arm is moving and then halfway through it just goes like that with a glitch, just find where that problem is. Which joint is the problem? Usually it's just one joint that's the problem because it got mixed up in motive. So if it's the shoulder joint that's the problem, click on the shoulder joint, look at the base animation keyframes, and just delete those ones. And assuming that wasn't a super important moment of animation where there's a lot of nuance, linear interpolation would be fine. It won't be a big deal. But otherwise, if you're just if you're not cleaning up glitches, and it's more about bumping the arms out to help with collision through the body and stuff, we don't want to animate on the actual base animation layer. We want to animate on top of that. And you can create many different animation layers with the green plus button here. So you could say have the right arm on one animation layer, the left arm on another animation layer, just to keep things separate. Because this can become quite confusing if you're doing multiple joints simultaneously on one animation layer. You're going to forget, oh, did I do the elbow and the shoulder for that one? I forget. So if I click on the animation layer, and let's just do something really silly and obvious right now. And I click on, I don't know, his head. And using the W, E, and R keys for, mostly just the E key for rotation, because we're just really rotating the joints. If I just rotate his chin up, like that, oh, it looks so angry. And then I set a keyframe, which there are no keyframes right now on the timeline. If I set a keyframe with the key button, now, see that little green triangle? Looks like an ice cream cone, actually. Now, he should keep his head up the entire time. It's just a very snooty monster now. Right? Makes sense, right? So if you wanted to, I don't know, this is a really silly thing to do, but suppose I wanted to make him shake his head up and down. I'm just going to copy and paste keyframes and then go in between and put his head down. Click the key button, then copy this key, put it on the in-betweens. And then he should be shaking his head up and down. He's rocking out. Wow, I don't even know why I did motion capture. I'm just animating this mutant from scratch here. So you might notice, oh no, where'd the keyframes go? Well, I'm not seeing any keyframes because I'm not clicked on that joint anymore. If I click on the head again, then I will see the keyframes for what I just did. If I click on, his wrist, there's no keyframes because I didn't add any keyframes for the wrist joint for this animation layer. You only see keyframes for things that you keyframed.
Can you do like impossible movements for joints?
Like what?
Like,
You want me to tuck his...
Observe numbers?
I mean, it's just going to rotate around 360. But, if I wanted to put his head into his body, seems legit. Like, and now he's just walking around with his head in his body.
That's actually
Another head rotates out. There are... if you set the control rig up, I'm I'm not a 3D model rigger, so I'm not super knowledgeable about these things. But for any of you that have ever animated a character before, you've probably worked with the controllers on the control rig, where you can grab onto the hand, you can position the whole thing up here, and it all moves. And they also have constraints set up on some of those joints so that you cannot do weird movements, right? Like there's a reasonable range of motion that we all have. My fingers cannot bend any farther back than this unless I break my knuckles, right? So that would be a constraint that you could have an animator set, or not an animator, but the rigger set for the animator, so the animator doesn't go and do something stupid, like bend the fingers too far back, right? Which is also useful too. It can help speed up the animation process because you don't need to, you can just crank it wide open, like, okay, wide open, not broken wide open, right? Or you can do close. You can do certain poses and have presets too. I don't really know that well how to do that, to teach it off the top of my head, but those are possibilities that exist out there in the world of 3D animation. What my main concern in this is showing you how to set keyframes on joints to clean things up, to help eliminate any sort of occlusion through the body or collision through different pieces of the body. Some of the joints, like this one, see I'm just manipulating the knee itself, which is kind of weird. It's much better to do the red ones. I forget the official name for them. But this actually has some constraints in it, so I can't go and mess it up. You know what I mean? If he's going to reach forward.
These things are not like permanent, right? It's just bound to the keyframe.
If you delete the keyframe, it will go back. And actually, I didn't keyframe this movement, so as soon as I move this, it just bounces back. So don't go and spend a lot of time getting something into a good position and then forget to keyframe.
But this is not offset, right? Offset is something else.
Offset how?
Say like pumping out arms permanently.
No, this is. I pumped his. Well, originally, before I kept going with his head to make him headbang, I offset his chin just to be permanently up.
So you don't have a keyframe that resets his head back to his original position.
Right.
That's the offset.
Right. Right. I mean, all keyframes are offsets, if you think about it. It's just that the offset animates over time. So you can do animation, if you want, but you really should have done that in the motion capture, because at a certain point, why not just animate it traditionally rather than do motion capture at all? I guess it really depends on what you're trying to do. There are no rules. You can do whatever you want. But most of what I'm showing you is just to fix problems. So let's go and find a problem. And I'm doing this quickly in the interest of time, but this really does take a lot of time to do. You really need to spend time looking at the animation from all sides, making sure that it's not clipping through. You're not just going to do this in 5 minutes and be done. Especially if you want to do the hands. You know what? That's a good idea. Why don't we do the hands rather than the headbang? Because you know what? You all have knife hands for your animation. Perhaps this wasn't the best avatar to use for the hands. It's only got 3 fingers.
I mean, that's where.
It's true. Just put mittens on, right?
Yes, mittens. So for the pipeline for like motion capture for this project right now to Unreal, we capture a motion, we import it into Motion Builder, retarget and clean up, and then you blend the animations together in Unreal.
If you want to blend them, yeah.
Yeah. Or they're not.
I mean, you only really need to blend. So again, Unreal Engine, typically a video game engine, right? Which means that a character in a video game, they're going to have a walk cycle, they're going to have a run, they're going to have a jump, they're going to have a fall, they're going to have a death, they're going to have a sword swing, all those different things. Because it's a video game and not a film, you can't control when those animations are going to happen. That's determined by the user, right? So those animations have to be ready to go at any point in time that the player hits the button, which means they have to blend together as well. We don't have that problem so much because we're working with a film, and we could just do one long take of your entire shoot and just import that. If you wanted to, you could cut up the different motion capture parts, and you could totally blend them. Does that make sense to do? Less so with a film, because just record another take. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's more like the traditional motion capture games. Right? They would be record like very short bursts of your like say running, falling, or dying movements, and then bring them into the player character.
Yeah, yeah. Because they are just short movements, right? Like they're not in a video game. They're not recording long takes of walking. It's just walking, and then they're just looping the walk. You know, and that's a performance reason, but also it's just unnecessary unless it's very crucial that they get this very specific walk around space. You know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so but if you're like making a project and like you, let's say you give like 2 or 3 sections that are meant to come together that for some reason can be captured in one single moment, you would put those together and have it as like one scene, and then you would do like right?
To hide the chop.
Or would you actually have 3 different takes for the 3 different animations? And then
I'm confused by what's happening.
Oh, actually, never mind.
Well, blending animations usually doesn't look the best because they're very different animations, especially something like this where we're translating around the floor, right? Like if you wanted to blend your death animation with Lucas's sword swing animation, you're gonna fly across the room trying to interpolate to his position, right? It's just not gonna look good. Those animations need to be in the same XYZ space and then blend the rotations of the joints in order for it to look good. Because otherwise you're just gonna get an avatar that looks like it's flinging itself across the room.
You wouldn't fix that, you'd change
You have to change the root motion, which is the root location.
I'm guessing that in those games where you have like bouncing off, like impact receiving animation, they probably like are doing it in like the 2 part. One part is like the first impact, and the second part be like a separate animation of like the in air flying, and then the third part being like landing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the cut up animations, because again, those might be controlled by during different conditions in the game. Like how many times does the character have to be hit to take a certain amount of damage to cause the animation that makes them fly back, you know? Or, they just one punch and then they fly back, and that's just, that's less interesting.
Yeah.
But those things can't be controlled in a game. Doing it live is difficult. We're like the animations here. Remember, we looked at this penguin guy, and I think there is. Does this have root motion in it? Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Walk in play. Yeah. Here we go. So the walk here, I guess, walking backwards, but not going anywhere, right? Like that movement of this character has to be controlled with a different keyframe that is driving them forward. Or if this was a game, that would be controlled by somebody pushing a joystick forward, right? But then there are animations that are not that one. Idle in place. Swim for no, these are all in place.
And those are good for blending. Like the movement action, the translation will be dependent on the player.
Right, right. But still, blending between a swim animation and a walk animation is going to be a little strange, possibly. You probably need an intermediate animation in between that helps bridge the gap, you know? Well, there's no. I thought there was some root motion in the animations in here, where it actually moved across the world in the animation itself, which is what all of your animations are. Which is fine. It's just different use cases. I forgot what the original question was.
You know, it's more just like a question: is the bigger projects we do that in a more efficient way? I mean, I get a good understanding of this.
All right, fingers. Segue into fingers. So why don't I just create a new animation layer, and I rename this. And just call it fingers. Fingers. And if I grab onto the tips of them, I don't need to animate every single joint because I'm using forward kinematics. So if I bend this guy's hand into just a fist the entire time, and then I take his thumb, good enough. Good enough for now. And then I select those joints that I moved, and I set a keyframe on them with the key button. Now he should have a fist the entire time. So even if you don't want to animate hands, you can get rid of the knife hands really easily. Just loosen them a little bit, and it will look so much better than motion capture knife hands. If you want to start to get into more nuanced animation, then yeah, that's going to take some time. But you don't have to be crazy. I mean, almost all of your animations, really, the fingers are kind of just secondary. They're not there. It's not like you're doing pointing and stuff where it's really about the fingers. But it will look so much better if you just loosen the hand like I did just now.
Is it possible to have like physics attached to, like having physics affecting your joints? So if you, it's like you mentioned about loosening it up. I was just thinking if physics would happen like shape in this way without you actually like having to animate them in the correct way.
Not with what we're doing right now. If you wanted to do like some puppet stuff in Unreal, you could do that, but not with like a more traditional animation pipeline like this. Certainly not with Motion Builder like this. So now his fist is closed all the time. The word offset was used before, right? But if I wanted his wrists to be in different animations throughout the... Oh no. Save your file, folks. Crashed. I'm gonna have to put this on my website. This is too good. longest video ever. I'll try to trim out the break. Characterized. The motion builder does crash sometimes. I know that's the first time today, but working with keyframes, you want to save a lot because it sucks to have to go back. Cool. Plot to control rig. And just do his fingers again real quick. Another thing that I want to show you is, this is in any 3D program, but global versus local controls. So in Motion Builder, it says GBL. If I click that button, I can change that to local, which means that the world coordinates are based off of the grid. So they're based off of these coordinates based on the origin of the grid. So positive z is this way, negative z is this way, negative x is this way, positive x is this way, and then y, positive y is up, negative y is down. If I do local controls, then it's not the orientation of the world, it's the orientation of the joint itself. And if the character has been rigged with any sort of knowledge, all the joints will be arrayed in the proper direction. If you have a character and its joints are not lined up nice, like if you look at all the joints of this character, you see that the grids are generally all in the same direction, except for the fingers here where they're a little tilted. It means all the orientations are the same. So when I bend the fingers, when I bend this finger, the other fingers are going to bend in the same way. Which makes sense, right? Because they're parallel to each other. Okay, so I'm going to create an animation layer, add a keyframe here. Now his fingers should be merged again the entire time, or not merged, but curled the entire time. There we go. If you wanted to have him flex his fingers here, it's the same thing as what we did with the head bob, right? So now I set a keyframe for them curled in the beginning. They're going to stay curled until they get to this keyframe in the middle here. And then I'm going to have them open up. I haven't made this keyframe yet. I'm going to have them open up, and then they're going to close again. So it's just going to flex his fingers. Very simple animation. So let's open the fingers up. So we'll start with the thumb. And then I will get, I will get these fingers.
So what's that interface percent?
I selected the mesh by accident. There's a lot of stuff going on in here. Oops. It's easy to do the wrong directions and stuff too, like I just did. It's really easy to get disoriented. All this crap going on. Uh-huh.
3D nausea and 3D software.
Oh yeah. I took a lot of Dramamine before this. So. What? 3D modeling? Alright, that's good enough. I'm going to set another key here. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. All that just to flex the hand, folks. But you know what? You don't have any animation on your fingers, right? So if you want any sort of nuance to the hands, you're going to have to do this for all of your long-ass takes that you did. Because you all recorded some long-ass takes. So before you do any of this, you should identify which part of your animations you actually want to use, right? So why you want to animate fingers on stuff that you don't care about. Unless you hate yourself and just love keyframe animation. This is why everybody decides to do a live performance for the final project, so you don't have to deal with this nonsense. Just do it live and let it be what it is. Okay? So, that can keep going for a very long time, depending on what it is that you want to animate. Let's try to find, I'm going to save this in case I crash again. I'm going to save this and try to find a place where I need to bump out his arm. Let's call this control rig working 01. All right, so let's find a problem here. Yep, there's a little problem. I'm sure there's lots of these. Is it a problem? If nobody notices, then it's not a problem. You don't need to fix it. That's right. If you notice it, other people will probably notice it. But if it's fast, it's probably not worth spending a lot of time fixing. And it really depends on, I guess, what the character is, how close is the camera. If this is a far shot, I'm never going to see his arm going through his chest like this. It's not worth my time. If you don't know, well, then you're kind of guessing a little bit, right? Obviously, if we fix every problem in this animation, then we can use it with any sort of camera animation. But that's a lot of work, perhaps a lot of wasted effort. Somebody in your group going to go and spend all their time animating the fingers, and then some other person in the group is going to do the Unreal work, and they're just doing close-ups on the character's head, and you don't see hands at all. The animator for the fingers is going to be really pissed off.
That's copyrighted.
Yeah. So just strategize a little bit. I don't think that's not a mocap thing or a motion builder thing. That's just a project planning thing.
Word editor.
Well, that too. All right. So for this hand in the body problem, usually what I like to do, and this is not just 3D animation, but any sort of animation. I don't know what the official term would be, but I like to think of this with the analogy kind of like the peaks and the valleys of animation. So what is the farthest extent that this arm comes into the body? And I'll try to find that time, and I'll set a keyframe there. And then I'll try to find a time in the movement where it is at its other greatest movement, like maybe like here. And I'll set a keyframe. So I'll have that adjustment to fix the hand somewhere in this movement to try to conceal it. Because if you wait too long, if you do it, start right here, and then you do it right there, it's going to be a much faster movement depending on how far that you fix the arm, right? Again, it really depends on what you're trying to fix, but figuring out how you can gracefully adjust your keyframes very important for the final look. So let's go ahead and mess with this. Animation layer 2, right arm. Set a keyframe here. make sure you set a keyframe before you make any big adjustments so you can always undo it. I guess you could delete the original keyframe as well. What did I say? I wanted to do it in this motion. Okay. So I'm going to set one there. Don't be afraid to zoom in on your timeline too. No, it gets intimidating when you can see every single frame. Coming in. And also look at the out animation too. Where does it go back to normal? So you see here it's in his pocket. But is there a time here where it goes back to looking good? This guy's kind of tricky because there's such big fingers and stuff. Maybe like right there. No, it's a little bit in the body still. Well, let's just work a little bit at a time. Let's just say right here, I want to bump his hand out a little bit, set a key, go back. Bump his arm out a little bit. Check around, set a key. If you love keyframe animation in After Effects, you're going to love this. That looks good, that looks good. Oh, right there. Set a key before that or after that. Maybe I'll set a, oh, I already have a key close to there. Okay. Bump that out a little bit.
When you play something before that, it's like, and where it cut normal.
Yeah. Or the previous position. Normal is subjective. And now, congratulations, I cleaned up 75 frames of a 772 frame animation. Long ass takes. Good. Well, let's bake that into a skeleton then, and then we will bring that back into Unreal, and that will pretty much wrap it up. Obviously, I didn't have time to clean up that entire character. It takes a lot of time to do. I can't say that enough. It takes a lot of time to do this sort of stuff and to add any sort of nuance with the hands. You have 5 fingers. Usually they're all doing the same thing. I guess the thumb is different than the other fingers, but that means you need to grab onto those joints. You need to keyframe all of them. It's not something that you can do really quickly. So really you should identify which animation parts you're going to use before you go and clean it up. I would even bring it into Unreal and look at the previs animation. I would treat the animation, the raw animation, as previs almost. Finish the world around it, get a sense for things, and then go back and clean things up, you know? So at least you know how it's playing in the world, it's interacting with different things, that sort of stuff. Because if it's not even working, then, you know, maybe use a different animation. You wouldn't want to waste your time cleaning up fingers, you know? Does that make sense? All right, now same thing. Blue, plot skeleton. So now it's not a control rig anymore. It is a skeleton. And I can save this. Mutant with hands. Well, I guess he has hands before, but now he has curled fingers. Oh, wow. These two are in trouble when this guy shows up. Mutant. Oops. 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 Mutant.
What did you do with plotting the control rig? Did you plot the control rig as the source entity character?
Yeah, as skeleton. So I just did the same thing that we did originally. Just
But this
big.
time source is the control skeleton instead of the original movement.
Correct. If you're animating the control rig, that is the case. Yes. Mutant with hands. Cool. I'm just gonna import this as one go instead of doing it separately. All right. All right. Oh boy.
So is it like off the center point right here on the lower portion? Is that because with this like odor is placed within the motion builder scene?
Excuse me. He's a mutant.
Okay, mutant.
Where that pivot is right there on the floor?
Yeah, it's the center of the motion builders floor, right?
It's yes. It's also the center of where we calibrated on the second floor. So where we placed the ground plane thing on the floor, that is the 000 position. So if you wanted to have everything more on top of this, you go on stand above that ground plane thing and do your T-pose right there instead of T-posing over there. Although when you walk around, obviously, you're going to walk around in space.
Yeah.
But you can then grab onto that root and move it wherever you want. I don't know. This guy's just going to be doing stuff out here during the...
You can watch the kill and then escape.
That takes too much work.
It's like 15 minutes, I think.
Oh.
I'm so scared.
It works.
Unexpectedly classic. What's going on?
I'm so
With the camera movement.
This is so epic. Wow. Unexpectedly great. But let's look at its animation though. Beautiful performance. Totally fit for a mutant. Look at that. His hands are curled. Yeah, I think we can get the flex of the fingers coming up here. Oh yeah, look at that. Wow. A whole 15 frames of beautiful animation. Bonus. You can do animation in here too if you play around with the curves and the additive tracks. I wouldn't suggest it though, like I said earlier, because it's just you don't have as much control with Unreal. But you can if you wanted to.
You aren't going to get to changing skeleton joints in Unreal, right?
What?
You don't get to do like joint manipulation in Unreal.
Oh, you can.
You can.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying that you shouldn't do because you don't have as much control. But you can. Curves, create curve. Shoulder. Edit curve. It's not hooked up to a joint. Oh, yeah. Never mind. Hold up. Joint with hands. You need to select the joint first. Bones. All hierarchy. Shoulder. Add curve. Create curve. Right arm. should be able to edit the curve. I set a keyframe, and then I set another keyframe right here. Oops. Oh, beautiful, it did nothing. I don't think I set the first keyframe. Key. No? Key. All right, let's do it backwards. Key. Well, something's happening here, but for some reason it's not showing the key. It's definitely moving.
See what the yellow text says each time you put
Yeah.
You have 100 millisecond impacts.
Nope.
Can you really control click on the curve itself? Or the key?
Oh, that's how it wants the key out. That's strange. There's a big old key button up here. Well, we got it. It's snapping because they're so close together. And if I move this, it just doesn't want to do it. It works though. I'm just doing something wrong because I don't usually animate like this. Use Motion Builder. You have a lot more control. And it's a control rig too, so you can grab onto multiple fingers and move them all in at the same time. Whereas here, we're grabbing onto individual joints, which sucks to do.
So all these information is included in an FBX file.
Yes. Yes. I do think this is amazing though. We could go into the mutant guy though and modify his. We got 5 minutes. Let's just go crazy here. Check this out. I'm gonna freestyle. This has nothing to do with motion capture, but this is gonna be fun. So I want to make the blue guy part glow. We were talking about materials earlier, so it got me a little excited. So I'm gonna go into the mutant material. I'm gonna go to the texture. I'm going to export this texture. Asset actions, export. Mutant diffuse. Save this to my desktop. Open up Photoshop. And I'm going to create a mask for the blue glowy areas. It's really going to make our film perfect. It's not my film, it's our film. All of our film. We did it together. Mutant diffuse. Cool. Select color range. Blue. Not that blue. Good enough. I'll just mask that. Select. Fill in with white. Select. Click. Layer. Black. Oops. Oh wow, that's a very high bit depth. I'll save it. Okay. Save as copy. PNG. This is a matte, black and white matte. It's another name for mask. Mutant, import, matte. Now I have this in here. It's just a positive, negative, black and white mask to use on the mutant. Texture sample, blue glow. How do we want to do this? Let's go here. Let's get a lerp, linear interpolate. Let's get a mask. Let's do a scalar parameter, power, let's call it. You know what? I just want this to be the emissive color. I don't want to take the original. All right, RGB. Multiply. It's not multiply, add multiply. Plug that into emissive color. This is vector parameter for color. Color. Let's make it red so we can see what we're doing. Again. When we come back from spring break, we're going to look at your videos, and then we're also going to talk about blueprints. There's a lot of boxes and lines. Power. Look at that. It's just a bunch of math and not even that much math and a black and white mask. So the black and white mask told it to just make those areas that are in the mask, the white areas, make them emissive. What kind of emissive? Well, I told it to make the color. I'm not even using the color from the texture at all. I can make this whatever color I want. Pink. Now that's a good look. I like that. Ooh. I love him. It's great. What's his name? The mutant needs a name.
Matt.
Me?
Ogre.
Ogre? Ooh, let's get really shiny. There we go.
Even shinier than the lightsaber, no way.
Oh, this is
Beautiful.
Quickly talk about how you change the item that you attach to your head.
Oh, sure. So if you have a mesh, whatever that mesh is, I think in this case I took just a cylinder in the interest of time, which was a separate mesh entirely. And then let me just take something else. I don't think I have any static meshes here. Let's see. Set mesh. We can take a chair. We can take a lamp. Let's take a lamp. So if you take the lamp, you put it in the world. This is one way to do this, probably the easiest way, not necessarily the best way. And if you right click on the asset and you say attach to, it's not going to let you attach to anything because you got to set it to movable because it's an actor that moves. So now if I right click on it, it should show me much more stuff, which it does. And I want to attach it to, I guess, our friend Ogre. And then it's going to ask me which joint I want to attach it to. Oops. Attach to mutant, probably his hand. And now if it's offset, you know it's going to be offset. So you need to go and put it in his hand. It's just easier to do this when they're in a T-pose rather than running around. Man, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening here. That's a good question. If I open up the her name's Maria. Yeah. No, you'd be wrong. Where is that character at? 1000% Maria. So it's still following the path of the hand, like if you were to grip it. But like look at the thumb and then have it that way.
Because if it's T-pose out straight like that, are you supposed to just put it out at an angle?
You have to fudge around with it to get it to look best, but in this general area.
Can you keyframe like the tilt of the sword during the animation?
Yeah, you could.
I think that's like the original question I wanted to ask.
Oh, okay. So you don't want to see an ogre with a lamp as a sword? Oh, wow, look at that. Yeah, because then we could drag the lamp into the sequencer, and then, you know, he's walking around with the lamp, and then when he runs away all scared, we'll just keyframe it here, and then, I don't know, we'll make the lamp just like fly away or something. But with a lot of rotations.
Is it gonna save like 500 degrees of turn, or is it just gonna do 360?
If you use the widget like that, it'll just do 360. But if you actually go into here and you put minus 1080 or whatever, then it would spin. Yeah. The pivot is really weird. The pivot is actually on the yellow part, I think. Or no, it's on the silver part, so it's not quite doing what I wanted it to do. But
can you also like detach the mesh in like a certain frame?
yeah, you could. Not with how I have it set up now, though. You could attach it in sequencer, so then you can animate how long the attachment stays for. It comes up as something like this, like a bar that you could just set the endpoint of, and then it would detach. But I didn't set it up like that for right now. Let's see what beautiful artistry we got here. Ah. Amazing. So this is my expectation for your projects in 2 weeks. if you can make something even 10% of this masterpiece. What?
But you don't even have a floor texture.
Oh, come on, man. Boo. I wanted it that way.
Artistic direction.
Yeah.
So really, you don't know how to apply for texture.
100%. Can retarget and keyframe mocap, but I don't know how to do a floor texture. That's 100% God's honest truth. All right. So the 24th, when we come back, I hope you all have a lovely break making beautiful artistry with your motion capture data, maybe relaxing a little bit. When we come back, we're going to review these motion capture videos. So You will post them to a Discord channel like we've done before. I will put all that up over the course of the next couple of days, and just upload it to YouTube or something, and then put the link in there. And then we'll watch all those at the beginning of class. We'll laugh together. We'll cry together. It'll be beautiful. And then we'll go and talk about blueprints, which would be less beautiful, but still good. Cool. I will now stop this recording.